Tactical sports takes. Inbound.
Who the fuck is that guy?
Beat him off.
Stomp on his head as he's unconscious.
Five-tool commentator.
He's the Willie Mays of sports broadcasting.
DiMaggio.
It's time now for North Star Sports, your source for the hottest sports takes in the business. Here's your host, Owen Ely.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Owen Ely Show. I'm your host, Owen Ely. You can follow me on Twitter at OwenEelyMN. You also can follow North Star Sports on Twitter at northstarmin. Be sure to check out our website at northstarsports.media. And welcome into the show, everyone. We got a great one for you today here on this Friday, December 10th, as we look to preview UFC 269 Oliveira versus Poirier, which will take place tomorrow at the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas, Nevada. As always, great to be back with you guys. We got a great preview show for you today, and yeah, not much more else to say other than that. Just very happy to be back and doing shows regularly, and last pay-per-view of the year. So it's been a very fun, very exciting 2021 for the UFC, and hopefully this is the nice capstone we get to a yet another tremendous year for the Ultimate Fighting Championship. Man, I'm really in the mood to preview some fights. We're expected to get about a foot of snow here in Minneapolis, so I can't wait to be snowed in tomorrow. Drink several cups of coffee and just enjoy a great night of fights through only the most legal methods. So very, very excited for this. We'll have the main card showdown tomorrow. Don't really give a shit about that. Updated rankings. We just finished our written preview for UFC 269. So go check that out at northstarsports.media. It'll be all over our social media sites, and we'll start working on 2021 awards. Obviously, there's still a fight night after this next week, so on the 17th, we'll have the awards for Fighter of the Year and Rookie of the Year and Knockout of the Year and things like that. So that's exciting. I saw that the year-end awards happened. Don't know how you can do that with 2 events left. So that's kind of crazy. It's kind of wild, but we'll do ours at the appropriate time. So without further ado, let's get right into this preview. Obviously, we'll start here in for the lightweight championship of the world. Obviously, it's the main event. It's Charles Oliveira taking on the number 1 contender, Dustin Poirier. Oliveira 31-8, Poirier 28-6. We'll take a look at the odds for this one, and Odds Shark is going to have Dustin Poirier as the -150 favorite. I gotta say, I'm not surprised. Poirier is the favorite. Seems appropriate to me, but should be a great fight stylistically. Not the greatest, because I'll get to what I think the greatest. Actually, there's no need to even spoil it. I actually think Poirier would match up, or excuse me, Oliveira would match up with Justin Gaethje a lot more interestingly. Obviously, it's kind of a meme at this point, to talk about Dustin Poirier's resume. We know how great his resume is. He's won, 9 of his last 10. I mean, you look at his last 10, 11 fights, it's as tough as it gets. His only loss is to Khabib. He's beat Conor twice, Dan Hooker in a war, Holloway, Alvarez, Gaethje, Pettis. Probably would have beat Alvarez twice, if not for that no contest. So, we know Dustin Poirier's the man. Doesn't do anything flashy, very solid fundamentals, great striker. Better striker than Charles Oliveira, but I don't think by much. I think the gap between Oliveira and Poirier is pretty small when it comes to striking. Obviously, you got to give it to Dustin, but what's allowed Charles Oliveira to become champion, what's allowed him to go on this 9-fight winning streak, number 1, is moving up. I shouldn't say he never should have been at 145. He was very young when he came to the UFC, but Smart move to move up to 155, and then the improvements in striking is what has gotten it done for Oliveira. He's always been elite on the ground, but we saw with another fighter on this card, Ryan Hall, that only can take you so far. You can't be a one-trick pony no matter how good that trick is in the UFC, and Oliveira has progressed into being a very well-rounded fighter. And he knocked out Justin Gaethje, Michael Chandler, something that Justin Gaethje couldn't do in 15 minutes. So, he's a well-rounded fighter. I think he will handle himself in the striking exchanges. He might lose more exchanges than he wins, but like I said, the gap is small between their striking, but it's a large gap on the ground. And I think Oliveira at some point in the fight is going to bring Dustin Poirier to the ground, and I think he will choke him out. I have it happening in round 4. I think Oliveira chokes him out. I think he chokes him out. You talk about winning by decision. I see some people saying, if it goes to a decision, it probably favors Poirier. I'm not so sure about that. I think Oliveira really can win this fight any way he wants. It's going to be an uphill battle to finish him with striking, but I think he could finish Poirier with striking. He could choke him out, but look at what he did to Tony Ferguson. He was the boogeyman of the division. Tony's very well-rounded, a great boxer, great on the ground, just an all-around crazy guy, and he ended up winning a decision. He won all the ground exchanges. He won all the striking exchanges. So, if it goes 25 minutes, I'm not going to say it favors either fighter, but I could easily see Oliveira winning via decision. He doesn't have to get the finish to win. Whereas Dustin, I would be incredibly shocked if he choked him out. If he knocked him out, it would make sense. But, I just think Oliveira has more ways to win. Poirier has more ways to lose. And they're both good fighters. So, when you put it like that, I got to go with Charles Oliveira choking out Dustin Poirier in round 4. And he's going to be the bigger guy in there, 2-inch reach advantage. So maybe if he can kind of establish a jab, maybe he can try his best to neutralize Dustin Poirier. 2 inches isn't the craziest gap in the world, but I really think Oliveira is going to get his respect. I think Poirier over the last couple of fights has really earned his respect. And certainly has been paid in full, but I think it's time for Oliveira to get paid in full. He's the champ. People are doubting him. He's the underdog, but Oliveira is going to come out on top, and then that's going to set up a great matchup against Justin Gaethje, which should be very, very fun. All right, we're going to move on to the co-main event. It's going to be for the Women's Bantamweight Championship of the World between Amanda Nunes and Juliana Pena. Nunes 21-4, Pena number 3 according to North Star Sports. She's going to be 10-4, and Nunes minus 950 favorite according to Bovada. I rechecked the odds, and now she's a minus 1,000 favorite. Actually, wait a minute. Do I have that right? Yeah. Okay, my bad. Yeah, I get messed up on odds. Yeah, she's a minus 1,000 favorite. Pena's the biggest underdog on the card, and I can't see how Pena wins. I said it in the preview. I think if Pena wins, that would be a bigger upset than when Holly Holm knocked out Ronda Rousey at UFC 193. It would be a major upset. I just don't see how she does it. Nunes is a far better striker, lands at the end of her punches. She's going to maintain distance really well. I don't know how you get close on Amanda Nunes. I'd be impressed if she got close enough to grab her. And Pena's a ground fighter. She's a ground fighter. You look at her significant strikes landed and absorbed. It's good. It's 2.8. It's 1.7. Like I said, the stats are not bad for Juliana Pena, but she's lost 2 of her last 4, so she split her last 4. And she's just next in line for the title. That's all it is. I don't think she earned this title shot. She's on a 1-fight winning streak. She beat Sarah McMahon. It's just someone Nunes has never faced before, and that's why it's getting done. And again, she's a ground fighter, so it's kind of like Islam Makhachev in a way, although it's better for Islam. But it's like though the 2.8 to 1.7 is not her kickboxing. It's not her standing there. That's her controlling someone on the ground and landing strikes. So it's a little disingenuous when you look at stats like that for a ground fighter, because it's not them standing and trading and landing these numbers. It's everything, which a lot of it is the ground game for Pena, which fair enough, but I figured I'd point that out. Nunes, 4.5 to 2.45 significant strikes landed per minute, 57% defense. And again, that's against the toughest schedule we've ever seen on the female side of things. I mean, nobody's had a tougher schedule than Amanda Nunes, and nobody's had a better stretch than Amanda Nunes. 12-fight winning streak. She's beat Shevchenko twice, Miesha Tate, Sarah McMahon, obviously Ronda Rousey, Cyborg, Holly Holm, Jermaine Durandamy. Made very short work of Megan Anderson. So I don't think Pena will have anything. It's not a question of whether or not Amanda Nunes will win. Freezing cold, take me if I'm wrong, and if I'm wrong, then fucking fair play. But I have no idea how Pena wins this fight. It's not if Amanda Nunes will win, it's how she wins, and I think she'll get it done fairly early, round 2 knockout. Striking is going to be way too much for Pena. If the fight goes to the ground, hey, maybe we'll see. I would still favor Amanda Nunes on the ground because she's no slouch on the ground and very active on the ground. 84% takedown defense as well, so fucking good luck trying to take Amanda Nunes down. And, it'll be interesting if Amanda Nunes wants to prove a point and wants to take down Pena. I don't know why she would, other than to prove a point, because I think she's so much better as a striker. But Pena has 23% takedown defense. That's some of the worst takedown defense I've ever seen. And Amanda Nunes, 53% takedown offense. So if she wants to take her down and choke her out to prove a point, I think she could. I just think, you're getting into you're storming the beaches of Normandy with a fucking squirt gun. I mean, that's truly how I feel about this fight. I mean, I don't think I can make it any more clear that Juliana Pena is going to be completely outclassed. But I think the best outcome might be Pena winning, because then there's at least some parity. At least there's something to talk about in this division. But, that's wishful thinking. Nunes is going to make pretty easy work of the Venezuelan vixen. All right, moving on to the featured main card bout. It's going to be between number 12, Jeff Neal, and Santiago Ponzinibbio. Neal is 13-4, Ponzinibbio 28-4. We'll take a look at the odds here. In Ponzinibbio, the slight minus 125 favorite, according to Bovada. The UFC is generally very deliberate when it comes to card placement. Sometimes there's some glaring mistakes. This one is not one of them. I could see why they put it here. Clear fight of the night contender, and should be a barn burner. I mean, Jeff Neal, hands of steel. He's a good striker. Good, not great. Striker, good power. But Ponzinibbio has power, and he's a far more polished striker than Jeff Neal, in my estimation. I don't know how the ground game figures into this one. I don't know how the clinch figures into this one. And quite frankly, I don't know who would win in those areas, but I think it's a little irrelevant. I think we're in for a stand-up battle here over 15 minutes. And I really like Ponzinibbio. He's coming off of that war against Miguel Baeza, fight of the year contender. I don't know if it'll win it, but certainly a fight of the year contender. And it's easy to forget how good Ponzinibbio was / is. He was on a 7-fight winning streak, knocked out Neil Magny in his home country, and then had that terrible stretch of injuries that kind of kept him out for 2.5 years, and he kind of got forgotten in a very deep and top-heavy welterweight division. But Ponzinibbio was kind of like the Tony Ferguson of that division. Tony Ferguson light. Obviously, he didn't do as much as Tony did in the lightweight division. But, he really kind of was the boogeyman of that division. And nobody wanted to fight him. And, he's very dangerous, very powerful. He came back after that 2.5-year layoff and got knocked out by Li Jianling, who's a good fighter, an active fighter, more importantly. And I don't want to take anything away from the fighter from China, but I think it's kind of a fluke loss. now that Ponzinibbio is more active, I like it. I think he can get the momentum rolling again. And, you know, we've seen limitations in Jeff Neal's game. You know, we saw it in the Wonderboy Thompson fight. Certainly in that fight, he was completely outclassed. And in the Magny fight as well, I mean, if he doesn't land big strikes, I don't really know what he adds. He's not particularly accurate. He's moderately active, but he gets hit more than he lands. And, you know, he doesn't really add a whole lot in the, you know, in the ground game or clinch or anything like that. So it's really, you know, I don't know. Either he steamrolls somebody or gets into a war. You know, I think Ponzinibbio is well equipped. Jesus Lord, excuse me. I think he's well equipped to win a war against Jeff Neal, but I don't think he'll have to, and I think it'll actually suit Ponzinibbio better if he just stays really technical and kind of picks him apart, because Jeff Neal is very pick-apartable, and we've seen that over the last 8 rounds that you know, he's fought. He hasn't won since December of 2019, which is kind of crazy to think. I mean, you know, he hasn't won in 2 years. So I like Ponzinibbio in this one. I think over 15 we maybe get a finish. Certainly possible we get a finish in this fight, but you know, Neal's durable. He hasn't ever been finished inside the UFC. So I think it goes the distance, but I think it's a pretty clear victory for Santiago Ponzinibbio. All right, moving on. Still on the main card, we'll have the flyweight debut of Cody Garbrandt as he takes on the number 5 flyweight contender Kai Kara France. Kara France is 22-9, Garbrandt 12-4. We'll take a look at the odds. Cody Garbrandt, the slight minus 145 favorite here. Really good matchmaking. I really like it. It's very purposeful matchmaking. Cody Garbrandt going down to flyweight. If he beats Kara France, he's an immediate title contender. Probably gets a title shot if he beats Kara France. And for Kara France, it's a big name, and that's kind of what you need. You know, he's an exciting fighter. You know, he's split 2 of his last 4, so it's not like he's on a crazy winning streak, but he's up there. And a win over Cody Garbrandt would you know, do him good. He's actually 4 inches shorter than Cody Garbrandt, but he's going to have nearly a 4-inch reach advantage on No Love, who has T-Rex arms. It's really tough. Cody says he feels good. He looks like Conor McGregor at 145. He looks completely depleted. He looks like an absolute skeleton. If he says he feels fine, I'll believe him. He looks terrible. He looks absolutely terrible. I trust that he's done it correctly, and I don't believe he's going to be depleted, on Saturday. But I think there's bigger problems for Cody Garbrandt than weight class, and a lot of people want to make it seem like this is a fix-all for Cody Garbrandt. This doesn't fix technically why Cody is not where he wants to be. It's just a fresh coat of paint. All the problems that he had at bantamweight are still there. You have to fix the actual problem. The only thing this does is it wipes the slate clean. Hey, you're in a new division. That's all it is. Like, he still has to fix the fact that he got boxed up by Rob Font. He could easily get boxed up by Kai Kara France. I'm not predicting that's what's going to happen, but like technically, you know, you didn't fix anything. I really liked him in the Asuncao fight, how he was very, very patient, but I think he needs to find a middle ground. You know, we saw and maybe even if he fought his best fight, maybe he still loses to TJ Dillashaw. That's a possibility. But there has to be a middle ground between just sitting there and getting pieced up by Rob Font and being overly aggressive and getting knocked out in the fights against Munoz and Dillashaw. And he needs to figure it out quickly because he's lost 4 of his last 5. The Asuncao knockout, amazing knockout, very cool, but you got to win in this business. It's not enough to just have a great knockout. And so I'm concerned, and I'll be watching this fight very closely. He's going to be the faster fighter. He's going to be the more powerful fighter, but I don't know if technically he's the better fighter. That being said, and it might be wishful thinking, I think Cody No Love is going to win this fight, and I think he wins in first round. In the first round, I think he wins via first round knockout. I think he just has a vintage performance. I think he comes out aggressive and he swarms Kara France, and I think he looks for the knockout. I think you want to make a statement when you come to a new division, and I think he'll make the most of the opportunity. I think he's a more special fighter than Kara France. That doesn't mean you're going to win if you're more talented, but there's something innate in Cody that makes him a great fighter, and I think he'll be thoroughly motivated, and I think he will make a big statement on Saturday night. All right, moving on to the main card opener. It's going to be in the bantamweight division between Sean O'Malley and Raulian Paiva. O'Malley 14-1, Paiva 21-3. Taking a look at the odds for this one, O'Malley a pretty heavy favorite, minus 335 according to Bovada. It's a step up in competition for Sean O'Malley, but again, him calling himself the unranked champ, they're really taking their time with him, and I don't like it. It's reminiscent of boxing. I don't really like, just keep feeding him guys outside of the rankings. You don't get that luxury. Other fighters don't get that luxury, so I don't understand why they keep doing this. Paiva's the B side in this. He's a fair roadblock, but I think he's going to get worked over by Sean O'Malley. I think it's going to be tougher than Moutinho. It's going to be tougher than Almeida. Paiva has been ranked, but Paiva's a flyweight. Paiva's a flyweight who couldn't weight cut properly, so it's another smaller guy. Although he's only going to be O'Malley's pretty fucking tall, but Paiva's 5'8", so he's not small, but he's clearly a flyweight. I think O'Malley's going to be way too powerful for him. O'Malley's just a really good striker. He's calm. He picks his shot. He doesn't force anything. I think he's going to win in round 3 via a knockout, a signature knockout. He's just so much more talented than Paiva. I'll probably be rooting for Paiva, but it's. I'd be surprised if Paiva wins this fight. He's not going to win with striking, that's for sure. And Paiva's not really a finisher. He's not really a finisher. So trying to win a decision against O'Malley, that's pretty tough. I would say if he wins, it's probably going to be via a slick submission or something. But I think O'Malley's going to be too much, and I think we need a step up in competition for Sean O'Malley. All right, moving on to the prelim headliner. It'll be in the featherweight division between Josh Emmett and Dan Ige. Emmett 16-2, Ige 15-4. Taking a look at the rankings here, Emmett comes in at number 6, Dan Ige at number 9. Looking at the odds for this one, Ige, the slight underdog, plus 35 underdog. Emmett, the minus 135 favorite. Really a fight that's going under the radar. But, it's the prelim headliner. I could easily see this kind of stealing some headlines on Sunday morning. I mean, this very easily could be a fight of the night. These two fighters are very similar. In my mind, they're both wrestlers. Emmett, I believe he was a collegiate wrestler. Ige, I guess BJJ. So they're both ground guys, but they're both hard-hitting. We saw what Emmett did to Johnson. We saw what Ige did to Gavin Tucker. So they're wrestlers with good power who like to strike and they like to move forward. So they're kind of direct parallels in a lot of ways. The stats are pretty similar between these two fighters. I like Ige more, and I like that he's more active. Obviously, Emmett tore his ACL coming off of an 18-month layoff here. Had a really nice win over Shane Burgos back in, June of 2020. But I like 50K. I mean, 50K is not coming off of a massive injury. He's 6 years younger, and he's had 3 fights since Emmett has last fought. So I really like Ige. He's going to have his timing down. This is his 3rd fight this year. yeah, he lost to the Korean zombie, but he's always a dog, and Emmett's a dog as well. So it's both going to be maximum effort. Should be a really, really nice fight, but I don't think it's going to go the way for Josh Emmett. I think Ige probably gets the win, but Emmett, it's kind of do or die for Emmett because at 36, I mean, he's kind of a grandpa. That's pretty old to be a title contender, and he's slowly running out of time, and the injury really didn't help. And it was an awesome win over Burgos, so he might have challenged for the title by now if he would have been healthy. Go out and get a win or two, and maybe he would fight Volkanovski, and he kind of would match up pretty interestingly against Volkanovski, because Volkanovski's kind of another guy who's in that sort of mold, or at least skill set. But I like Dan Ige. And I think he wins by decision. I don't think he finishes Josh Emmett, and I'm going to say he wins by split decision because I'm going to bet you this fight's going to be pretty fucking close. So, yeah, Dan Ige by split decision. Moving on, prelim co-main event, if we want to call it that. We'll have a battle of two top 15 bantamweights. Pedro Munoz taking on the Dominator, Dominic Cruz. Pedro Munoz, 19-6, Cruz, 23-3. Pedro Munoz, number 9, Dominic Cruz, number 11. Taking a look at the odds here, they'll have it as a pick'em. It's a pick'em, although technically Munoz is minus 115, Cruz 105. Very, very interesting fight. I love a lot of the fights on this card. If you couldn't tell, I'm so excited for this fight card to happen. I love Dominic Cruz. He's one of my favorite fighters. I'm glad that he's more active. I'm glad that he's healthy, and I think he matches up really nicely against Pedro Munoz. Dominic Cruz has that certain figure 8 kind of herky-jerky style that is a fucking nightmare for fighters because you don't see it anywhere else other than Dominic Cruz. Nobody else does it, as far as I know. I don't scour the fucking regionals, but nobody does it like Dominic Cruz. Just a legend of the sport, a real G. And he's one of those fighters. There's kind of very few fighters that if you watch a black silhouette of how Dominic Cruz fights, you could instantly tell it's Dominic Cruz. And there's kind of very few fighters that you can do that with. I mean, you could do that with Michael Venom Page. You could do it with Wonderboy Thompson. Probably Anderson you could do that with. Maybe Connor just because of his capoeira kind of loosey-goosey style, but I mean, Dominic Cruz is one of one. I mean, he's a special guy. I really like Pedro Munoz, and I've kind of been riding the Pedro Munoz train for quite some time, speaking his praise even before the Cody Garbrandt fight. But, he's kind of running into some trouble here because Pedro Munoz is a great fighter and nobody is going to skate by him. It's always a tough night at the office when you're fighting Pedro Munoz. He's short, he's stout, he's powerful. He's good on the ground, but he's a real move forward, in your face type of fighter, brawler you could even call him. Although there's certainly technique with the madness, but it's gonna be tough. But I think Dominic Cruz is very well suited, certainly defensively, to take on Pedro Munoz. He's fought many Pedro Munozes. Pedro Munoz doesn't do anything that a lot of fighters don't do. That's not to diminish how great of a fighter he is, because he is a great fighter, but he's a very traditional Brazilian who's good at BJJ, who has power in his hands. You know what I mean? So he's a very meat and potatoes type of guy, which I can very much respect. He's also the nicest motherfucker in the game too. I love Pedro Munoz, just a real nice class act, great guy. But I think Dominic Cruz. If anybody has seen the most meat and potatoes, in the bantamweight division, in the history of bantamweights in MMA, it's Dominic Cruz, and I think he gets it done, vintage Dom Cruz style. And then I think it sets up for a nice matchup between Jose Aldo and Dominic Cruz. I would fucking love to see that. I really hope Dom wins so I can see him fight Jose Aldo. But for as much as I want Dominic to win, I'm not going to be rooting against Pedro Munoz. May the best man win, and I truly mean that in this fight, because you can't... If anybody roots against Pedro Munoz, you're a fucking cockhead. Pedro Munoz is just... He's the man. What a great guy. Got fucked over in that Frankie Edgar fight. Totally won that fight. And very underappreciated in a very deep and ever-growing bantamweight division. I mean, a division that truly... It would do it justice to rank it 1 through 25. It really would. All right, we're going to move on. Still on the prelims here, the second prelims, not the early prelims. We'll have a heavyweight fight between Augusto Sakai and Tai Tuivasa. Sakai 15-3-1, Tuivasa 13-3. Sakai number 12 and Tuivasa number 14. We'll take a look at the odds, and it's a pick'em, straight pick'em, 110. But not a pick'em in my mind. Certainly not a pick'em in my mind. Two fighters going in two different directions. Augusto Sakai, 2-fight losing streak. Tuivasa, 3-fight winning streak. All 3 wins coming in the first round. I don't really like Augusto Sakai. I don't really think he's that good of a fighter. I don't really get it. He's a big lumbering guy at 6'3". Certainly does not look like an athlete. But his body does not tell the whole story. He's been finished in his last 2 fights, but he's fairly durable. Honestly, he's fairly durable. Kind of looks like Shrek, to be honest with you, the Brazilian Shrek. But, got exposed by Overeem and knocked out pretty quickly by Rosenstrike. And I think Tuivasa is just as powerful as Rosenstrike, but he's going to be way more aggressive than Rosenstrike. I mean, Tuivasa will sit there and trade. And at heavyweight, everyone has power. I don't doubt that Augusto Sakai has power. I mean, he finished Marcin Tybura in under a minute. But I don't really get the appeal of Augusto Sakai. I really need to see him improve. I've just been, it's cool. He had a cool rise. What was it, a 6-fight winning streak? You're winning against, Tybura and Ivanov and Arlovsky. But when the rubber met the road and he was in main events and when he was fighting top guys, he just kind of folded. So I don't think he's going to have too much success against Tuivasa, although anything can happen at heavyweight. But I think Tai knocks him out. I don't think it's going to be a 4th consecutive first-round knockout. I think it'll take place in round number 2. But there's just something different about Tuivasa really making the most of his second tenure here in the UFC, and the motherfucker's only 28 years old. I mean, Jesus, heavyweights can fight till they're 43, so, maybe it was a little too premature the first time around for Tuivasa, the first rise up, but I think he's learned something. He's learned something the second time around. All right, moving on, we'll have a middleweight fight here between Bruno Silva, not the flyweight, the middleweight, between, Bruno Silva and Jordan Wright. Silva's going to be 26-1, Jordan Wright 12-1. Neither fighters are ranked. Kind of an interesting fight to pick here. So Silva, he's had 2 appearances in the UFC, 2 wins, knocked out Wellington Turman, and then gets the win over Andrew Sanchez. Kind of struggled in that Sanchez fight, and Sanchez is a tricky fighter. I kind of wish he was still in the UFC, but they cut him after that fight. Jordan Wright won 2 of 3, got knocked out pretty badly by Joaquin Buckley, but in his 2 wins, he's kind of made short work of his opponents. Had a nice win over Jamie Pickett in 64 seconds, and knocked out Ike Villanueva in 90 seconds. So, Jordan Wright, he's got good finishing ability. Same with Silva. So, it wouldn't shock me if there was an early finish in this fight. I actually think it's going to go to a decision. Bruno Silva, you look at the stats, significant strike differential is north of 3 per minute for Silva. That's going to spell doom for Jordan Wright. Might give him a little bit of trouble because he's kind of a weird karate-style fighter. I don't know if Silva's ever fought anybody like that, so maybe that will make it a little tricky, but the stats don't lie. Silva looking pretty good through his limited UFC appearances, and I like him to get the job done via decision. because I got to pick some decisions. All right, moving on. Speaking of another talented Brazilian, we'll have Andre Muniz taking on Eric Anders. Muniz 21-4, Anders 14-5. Take a look at the odds for this one, and Muniz only going to be the slight minus 145 favorite. This is the early prelim headliner. It was originally supposed to be Andre Muniz and Dricus du Plessis, which would have been fucking amazing. I think Dricus du Plessis is a fucking future middleweight title challenger. That dude is amazing. So Andre Muniz should be counting his lucky stars that he's not going to get knocked out, at least now. At least not Saturday by Dricus du Plessis, because that dude is a monster. A fucking monster. Muniz, kind of a guy I never really took recognition of until he got the armbar on Jacare Souza back in May. Just a sickening arm-snapping armbar on Jacare Souza. And sometimes that's what you need. He was on a good winning streak before then. Winning streaks don't really mean shit if you don't beat good fighters. Nobody really recognizes winning streaks unless you beat notable names, and he beat a notable name, and that's just what he needs to jumpstart his career. That's exactly what he needs. So he's not fighting du Plessis. He's fighting a former University of Alabama linebacker, Eric Anders, ya boy, who I'm a fan of. I like Eric Anders. I saw him at the UFC, at the infamous UFC Minneapolis card back in June of 2019, where he knocked the fucking piss out of Vinicius Mejia. But I think Muniz is going to be too much for Eric Anders. For as much as I like Eric Anders, it's kind of an irrational liking. I like him more at middleweight than at 205. He's a little too small for 205 frame-wise. I mean, he's never small for any division he's in. He's a fucking huge boy. He's massive. I mean, he's thick. He's thick, and he's scary. Please take that out of context. But no, he's a very powerful striker, but outside of that, which is very legitimate. He could knock out Andre Muniz. I'm not saying that's not possible, but his cardio is not that great. His wrestling is not that good, and his striking is kind of not that good. He's just really powerful. He's really fucking powerful. You got to mind your P's and Q's, but I think if you don't fall asleep at the wheel, Muniz probably wins this fight. He doesn't get hit a whole lot. Eric Anders gets hit more than he lands, and Muniz picks his shot. I mean, 45% significant strike defense, so that's not super great. So the punch could happen, but he's so active on the ground. Anders does have 76% takedown defense, so it might take a little bit for Andre Muniz. That's good takedown defense, but very active on the ground, and if the fight goes to the ground, Andre Muniz will choke him out. That's for true. If I was Eric Anders, I wouldn't even block a fucking punch. I would just hands down all the time, just trying to stop a takedown. I would not be worried about the power of Muniz as much as I'd worry about the ground skills of Muniz. That being said, when it's all said and done, I think Muniz. So I wrote in the article, Muniz is going to beat Eric Anders via round 1 submission. I think upon further consideration, I'm going to make it round 3. I think this fight lasts a little bit. I think Muniz maybe works Eric Anders out on the feet a little bit, drains his cardio. Anders has the good takedown defense, so maybe the fight will last a little longer than I initially anticipated. But I think Muniz has a lot more tools in the old toolbox than your boy Eric Anders. All right, we're going to move on to the women's flyweight division. We'll have a fight between Erin Blanchfield and Miranda Maverick. Blanchfield 7-1, Miranda Maverick 9-3. She's also going to be ranked at number 14 in the North Star Sports rankings. We'll take a look at the odds here. Miranda Maverick, the slight minus 140 favorite. An interesting fight. I don't really know the reason for putting this together. I don't understand the reason for putting two young prospects together. Maverick's only 24, Blanchfield 22. It's a fight that we could easily see rebooked a few years from now. I think both these fighters are the future of the sport, certainly the future of their division. It's unfortunate that, I think Miranda Maverick's going to win, so it's unfortunate that Erin Blanchfield's going to have a loss this early in her UFC career, because there's not really a reason to put this fight together. But they're both highly touted. I just think they're at different points in their career. And, when you're talking about a 22-year-old and a 24-year-old, that 2-year gap is a lot more significant than a 2-year gap between a 34-year-old and a 32-year-old, So, when you're that young in the game, I mean, 2 years is a fucking huge difference. And you look at Miranda Maverick, she's had 3 fights in the UFC, 3 wins in the UFC, in my opinion, because I think it was an actual robbery. And you guys know I don't use that often. I really refrain from using robbery because people use it to describe every decision they disagree with. That was a bona fide robbery in the Macy Barber fight, because Macy Barber lost every single round of that fight. So, Maverick is just well-rounded. She's a good striker, an improving striker, great on the ground, physically imposing for someone who's 5'3". So I think she's going to be too much for Blanchfield. I don't think Blanchfield's going to have a whole lot of success. She's very talented. Both of these fighters could be in the top 5, 2 or 3 years from now. Maverick probably a lot sooner. The 2 or 3 years, I guess, is more for Blanchfield. But it's too much. I just don't like it. I don't think you're matching up 2 fighters appropriately. I'd like to see Blanchfield fight a Priscilla Cachoeira or fucking Antonina Shevchenko or something. That might even be too much. I mean, you don't want to necessarily baby somebody when they come to the UFC, but you also want to kind of match people up at the same level to kind of see where they're at. And I don't. So, if Erin Blanchfield loses this fight, what did we learn? What do we learn? She lost to somebody in the rankings in her second fight? I mean, she wasn't in the UFC 3 months ago, so it's just, I don't know what you learn. And if Maverick beats her, what do you learn? That she has way more experience than Blanchfield? It's just one of those things where you got to fight, you got to make money, you got to put fights together, you got to fill out a card. But I don't really understand the purpose of this fight, so it's a little unfortunate. Moving on to the featherweight division, we'll have Ryan Hall taking on Derek Minner. Hall is 8-2. Derek Minner 26-12. Taking a look at the odds for this one, Ryan Hall, the -210 favorite. Tailor-made matchup for Ryan Hall. I mean, we saw him get exposed in his last fight against Ilia Topuria. Ryan Hall he's a one-trick pony. This guy cannot strike. And he's got one trick. Now, the one trick is very good. That's a very good trick to have. His one trick is better than a lot of people's best trick, but it's all he has. And in MMA, you can't do that. Ryan Hall would be a fucking legend of the sport if he was around in the 90s. But it's just you have to have some degree of well-roundedness to have success in the UFC. He got exposed by Topuria. That being said, again, like I said, it's a tailor-made matchup. Derek Minner probably has better striking, but he's a veteran of the regional scene, and he's a ground specialist. That's what he is. So we have 2 submission fighters, and we'll see how it plays out. You know what I mean? Maybe Ryan Hall's the better striker for all I know against Derek Minner. I mean, who knows? But I think neither fighter will shy away. Sometimes like Askren and Damian Maia. Sometimes when you put 2 submission guys, 2 ground guys against each other, sometimes we see a kickboxing match. I don't think we'll see that here. I think Ryan Hall is confident on the ground. He will always want to fight on the ground, and no matter the opponent. And I think Derek Minner will probably just say, fuck it, let's fight on the ground. I mean, Derek Minner, especially in the first round, and especially with, what the hell is his favorite choke? He gets a lot of rear naked. But, I don't think Derek Minner will shy away either. I think this is actually going to be one of those rare situations where they're just going to say, hey, let's see who's better on the ground. I think a lot of people would think Ryan Hall is. We're going to get to the bottom of it. Ultimately, I pick Ryan Hall to choke out Derek Minner in round 2. All right, moving on to the second fight on the early prelims is going to be between Randy the Zohan Costa and Tony Kelly. Costa's 6-2, Kelly 7-2. Matchup here, two relatively inexperienced but scrappy strikers. Costa's really had to grow up in the UFC. He's had 4 UFC fights. He has split them right down the middle. He's long, he's lanky, 5'9". Very good reach for bantamweight, 73 inches. I'd love to know his leg reach as well. He's got a very long leg reach, and he's powerful. He's powerful. Almost had Adrian Yanez out of there in his last fight before Yanez turned it around in the second round and knocked him out. But he's looked good. He's powerful. His 2 wins are first-round knockouts. I could very easily see him. And I just realized I didn't even put a prediction on this fight, so I have to go back and edit it. Randy Costa round 1 knockout. I think he knocks out Tony Kelly. I don't think too much about him. He's on a pretty sizable layoff. He hasn't fought in 14 months. His only win is over Ali Al-Kaisi, who does not have a win in the UFC. Kind of got worked over by Kai Kamaka III, who's no longer in the UFC. So I just like Costa. I think he's the better striker. And, I think it'll be a pretty short one. They'll have to go back to the booth pretty quickly on this one, in my estimation. And all right, we finally arrived. The prelim headliner, Priscilla Cachoeira and Jillian Robertson. Cachoeira 10-3, Robertson 9-6. We'll take a look at the odds for this one. Robertson, pretty heavy, -400 favorite. I'd say that's pretty accurate. Cachoeira surprised me. I certainly did not expect her to be here. She's a fighter who, in her UFC debut, drew Valentina Shevchenko, got historically dominated, and then lost 2 decisions, one to Molly McCann and one to Luana Carolina. I would have figured that she would have been cut, but since then, sprung the upset, knocked out Shayna Dobson in 40 seconds, came back, knocked out Gina Mazzani. Those are 2 very low-level fighters, but I'm surprised from Cachoeira. She's kind of turned it around, carved out a little hole here in the UFC. It's the winter time. She carved out a knot in the tree, and she'll survive the winter. But she's going up against a very talented fighter in Jillian Robertson, someone who I'm a fan of, but she's frustrating. She's frustratingly talented because she'll have these really awesome performances where you go, wow, I mean, that really kind of seems like someone who's going to figure into the title picture at 125 sooner rather than later. But then she'll just have these losses where you just go, what the fuck are we doing? What are we doing? She's very, very talented on the ground. Definitely a ground fighter. Her striking is not that good. She's been exposed on the feet, but in her last 2 losses, she's been exposed on the ground. So it really kind of puts it into perspective where she is in the totem pole. I got out-wrestled by Miranda Maverick, out-wrestled by Talia Santos, who's in the top 5 now, so not a lot of shame in that, but she's losing a lot of fights recently. She's lost 3 of her last 5. So I don't really know where she is. I think she's better than Cachoeira, so she'll beat Cachoeira, but listen, she's kind of one of those fighters that's really talented, will look very, very good, and she's a finisher. She'll choke fighters out, but she's kind of at that point where she'll beat fighters who she's better than and lose to fighters that she's not supposed to win, So something's got to change. Maybe something clicks. 9-6, does not look like a good record. That's not really a record you want to have, but I think against Cachoeira, she's going to win. I think she'll choke her out in round 3. I think she'll regress back to the mean. Actually, well, in this case, progress to the mean because she's on a 2-fight losing streak. But she's kind of like Kirk Cousins in a way. Just always moves towards average. If you're too high, you get knocked down. If you're too low, you get knocked up. Again, a weird way of putting it, but I think that she's just too talented to lose to Priscilla Cachoeira. But she really, 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 really needs to mind her P's and Q's with the striking because Cachoeira has turned out to be a little bit of a striker here, so you don't really want to fuck around with Cachoeira. She will knock you out, but I think Jillian Robertson wins this one. All right, so with that, we've reached the end of our preview here for UFC 269, so If you liked this, please give us a 5-star review wherever you're listening. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at northstarsports.media or Owen Ely MN. Check out our website at northstarsports.media. Actually, I fucked that up. Northstar MIN. Actually, did I? I've had way too much caffeine today. I don't even know what's going on. You guys know. You know the thing. You know the thing. It's like Joe Biden. You know the thing. You guys know to go to northstarsports.media or owenely.com because they go to the same spot. Check out our written preview. Check out our rankings. They are updated. We'll update them tomorrow. We'll have them out, fresh off the press right away. So, we're staying on top of things. And, we'll also have the main card showdown as well tomorrow. So it's a big time. It's a fun time. Spread some of the holiday cheer and show some love for North Star Sports. And outside of that, thanks for tuning in, everybody.